You're walking down the street, eating a sandwich, not a healthy one because you're a fat bitch. And you hear people talking basketball. Now, basketball is talked about commonly, but they're talking about the Knicks. And it's in conversation. And you wouldn't believe that these people are having positive things to say, whether it's Julius Randle leading the Knicks with his great level of play in his all-star selection. Emmanuel Quickley, young, sixth man, can score like that. Or it's RJ Barrett developing very nicely, or maybe even a good coach. All of a sudden, these New York Knicks are above 500 heading into the All-Star break. Of course, there's a lot of basketball to go. But what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the type of rumors and how to execute them going towards the trade deadline for the New York Knicks. That includes Victor Oladipo, Zach Levine, Bradley Beal, which I don't see happening. All of that and so much more. Stay right here. Now, let's careful, or at least we know of the past, that when we're talking about the Knicks, we have to take everything with a grain of salt. Now, it seems a little bit more different, and the reason why I'm going to say that is because this is why. If the Knicks continue the way that they're going, you will start to see more players develop interest and coming to, because they start to see that the team's headed in the right direction. It's not that the Knicks are in a location, New York, yes, it's the media and all that is probably very difficult to deal with, but Madison Square Garden is by no means a place where no player wants to play. If anything, it's a place where players tend to come and love to play, okay? Hasn't happened for a while because the Knicks have been the worst team in basketball for the last 7 to 8 years. Without any type of debate or any type of question, maybe the worst franchise in all of sports. That's starting to change. Why is it starting to change? Well, first off, it started with a new coach. Started with some good draft picks. Obi Toppin is a different kind of story because we haven't seen that much of him. But as far as everything goes, the Knicks are starting to play well, right? Oh my God, all of us Knicks fans were so excited. Early in the year, we were 5-2, 6-2. We all started getting excited. It happens. And as Knicks fans, we sit and we wait to say, okay, this is great. Where does this go wrong, right? Didn't seem to be the case so far this year. Now, are we going to win an NBA Finals this year? No, we're not. Are we going to make the playoffs? I would say more likely than not we make the playoffs, but I don't like to be the guy that jinxes the franchise because I've been known to do that. I said the other day, talking to some coworkers, I said, yeah, Devils are good. We're talking hockey. Yeah, we're going to smack the Rangers again. We lost 6-1. That's why I tend to keep my mouth shut. As far as everything else goes, we have a couple of players now. Again, the Knicks could totally land somebody irrelevant to this list, but we have 3 players that I'm going to talk about the Knicks monitoring and potentially getting come the trade deadline in a couple of weeks. The first one, well, before we do any of that, I just saw something for the Knicks and DeMarcus Cousins. Please, I'm not interested. I don't want a player that's a constant injury burden, and I do not want a player that makes more noise in the locker room than he does on the court. That's no disrespect. Again, when you do things like YouTube and you do things like that, there are going to be times where you say things that are heavily monitored, and that's just how it is, folks. That's just how it is. Okay, it's no disrespect to any player in the league. It's nothing but love for every player. But we're going to talk about this, okay? The first one is one that's been heavily entertained, and that's Zach Levine. Now, we'll talk about Zach Levine. Great player on a not good team. The only thing negative you could say about Zach Levine is probably the fact that the team is not getting better. Zach Levine is on a monstrous level right now. He's averaging nearly 30 points a game. He's leading in a lot of categories. He's playing great. The Knicks have Julius Randle as their night-to-night consistent scorer, and I don't know if they would quite put RJ Barrett in that level yet. RJ Barrett is developing very nicely. I don't think any Knicks fan can complain about him. We were very skeptical last year. Obviously, the ideal draft last year was Zion Williamson, which was has been a gold mine for the Pelicans, but obviously the Knicks got the 3rd pick. And I don't look at RJ Barrett as a downgrade. They didn't get the 1st pick. They didn't get the 2nd. I'm sure the Knicks would have went with Ja Morant. But those top 3 picks from the NBA draft last year have been all good. Zion's been pretty much just as advertised. Morant's been fantastic. RJ was a little bit slow out of the gate, but he's coming along very nicely this year for the Knicks. And he's starting to reach into the territory of we don't want to trade him. But we don't know if we can always rely on RJ to score consistently every night. We have that reliability with Julius Randle, but we're not sure. RJ's been more good than bad, but we don't know if we can consistently rely on him to get into that category. I do believe that he will find his way into that category, but I don't think that he's quite there yet. But Zach Levine is playing on a monstrous level, and the energy and the atmosphere that Zach Levine would bring to the Knicks and Madison Square Garden would be fantastic. But my only worry is with trying to get someone like Zach Levine is I feel like the Knicks would have to trade house. I feel like the Knicks would have to trade, not everybody, but I feel like Chicago realizes, obviously, that they have this potential with Zach Levine to trade your best player who, in all honesty, is great on the court, but the team hasn't gotten better. The Bulls have been terrible for the last 5 years, to be honest with you. They haven't been good. But to trade somebody like Zach Levine, I think that they would require a lot in surplus. And that's why I'm not talking about a guy like Bradley Beal on this list, because I think the Knicks, to get someone like Bradley Beal, would have to trade the entire team, the front office, all managers. They would have to trade the seats, concessions. They would have to trade everything that they have to get somebody like that. So I think Bradley Beal's unrealistic. Zach Levine is a little bit unrealistic too, to an extent. We have some notes here from fan side. It says Levine's been lighting it up in Chicago. Team hasn't improved in quite a while. Should the Knicks look to kick the tires on a potential Levine deal? The combination of Levine playing the best basketball, paired with the fact that he's on a Julius Randle-esque budget contract where he's owed $19 million, the Bulls would ask more for the Knicks swap. He's averaging 29 points a game, a steal, 5.1 assists, and 5 rebounds. He's shooting close to 44 from deep. Somebody discussed on here, here's an example of a trade I believe would work with both sides. And this is more likely. The Knicks would get Zach Levine. That's all the Knicks get from this trade. But Zach Levine is self-explanatory. The Bulls would get Obi Toppin, Kevin Knox, Frank Nilakina, Dallas 2023 first-round pick, and Detroit 2021 second-round pick. Now, put the picks to the side. Obi Toppin is a gamble, because if you trade a player that's young, that people say have potential, and he turns into a megastar, then you screwed up the trade. But if he turns out to not be exactly what he was advertised or what people think he's going to be, now all of a sudden it's, oh, you made the right decision. When you're trading on a player that you just drafted, that you believe to have potential, you not only know that the player you're trading for is great, you're banking that the player that you're trading is not going to be as good, better, or a megastar, or somebody that important to Zach Levine. Now, obviously, Obi Toppin hasn't really had that much of a collective summary because he was injured for a while. He hasn't really played too much. So Obi Toppin hasn't necessarily been, we don't have much of a sample size from somebody like that. So we can't really sit here and say, oh, well, Obi Toppin this or Obi Toppin that. You don't know. But if it's advertising and the other team is willing to take the risk on what Obi Toppin could be, then go for it. Kevin Knox came out of Summer League a couple of years ago, lighting it up, has not done anything since. Again, young player. Kevin Knox is not coming along, at least not for me and not my eyes. There have been flashes of potential, but I think Kevin Knox has been a very weak part of this Knicks team. He does not score consistently. He doesn't put up points. Kevin Knox, I think if you look at any Knicks trade package, Kevin Knox is included. That's just my opinion. It's not happening. Frank Nilakina is a different one. Not your typical point guard scorer, great defender, does have potential. You know, Frank Nilakina is one of those guys where I would keep him on the team. But again, if there's a trade for somebody like Zach Levine, I would trade him. I wouldn't rush to get rid of somebody like Frank Nilakina. But because there is potential. But again, I would trade him if I had to. I don't think that's an unrealistic trade. And then obviously draft picks. Who doesn't love draft picks? That's for Zach Levine. Do I see it happening? No, I don't. I don't see it happening. Because I think that the Knicks, I don't see them trading Toppin. I don't see it. Not yet. We'll talk about the next player in a minute, which is Victor Oladipo. The Knicks lack a closer and someone who can take the top off of a defense. Bringing in Levine and pairing him with Julius Randle, you have two great consistent scorers on a nightly basis. Randle is great. Even better than Randle would be Zach Levine. So why wouldn't that be good? That's a good trade, but the realisticness of it is I don't see it happening. For whatever reason, I don't see it happening. I do think Zach Levine will potentially find another home before the trade deadline, but I don't see it happening with the Knicks. It's realistic, but I don't see it happening because I just don't see the Knicks going with that. Now we talk about the next guy, Victor Oladipo. I see this trade potentially happening. Victor Oladipo was a star in Indiana. He was great. Eventually part of the trade. Found his way on Houston. Now, it's not just basketball, it's been football too. Houston sports has been a complete disaster. We're not talking about football today. The Houston Rockets have, ever since they got rid of James Harden, have just been a disaster. The team is not playing good whatsoever, and it's not coming along. Oladipo is an interesting guy. Is Oladipo a guy you're going to build your franchise around? I say that that's questionable. He does have a bit of an injury history. Oladipo is a very good player. I don't think anybody takes away from the fact that Victor Oladipo is a good player. I think what we look at is, the Knicks are seeming that they may have this potential to have Julius Randle be the next franchise's big star. So Oladipo coming in would be to aid him in scoring and assisting and obviously play. No question about it, Oladipo's an all-star. I don't think anybody takes that away from him. And I think it's more realistic because Houston is trying to get rid of him. Houston is trying to dump money. Right here it says there are a lot of people in the organization that see Oladipo as a really valuable addition to what we have now. I'm not sure how the top decision makers feel about Oladipo, but the Knicks would have to commit max money. That's where part of the problem lies. Oladipo's great, but would the Knicks give somebody like that a max contract? That's one of the things that is questionable for me in the Victor Oladipo sweepstakes, because I don't know if I would do that. A pending free agent, any move to acquire Oladipo will be done under the guise acknowledging that the guard will offer him a max contract in free agency. The Knicks would be able to offer him $195 million over 5 seasons. That's why these specific Knicks rumors are heating up. It would not be a short-term marriage. I think the Knicks right now are looking for another big superstar. I don't think the Knicks are looking for short-term contracts. I think that's a thing that we've been doing for quite a while. I think, personally, Oladipo would be a great fit to the Knicks. Again, he does have to stay healthy. He's had some very, very unfortunate and gruesome injuries. But as far as that goes, there's no doubt about what he can bring to the table. He's averaging 19 a game, 4.9 rebounds, 4.7 assists. Not shooting so hot in 15 games this year. It's his first full campaign since suffering a brutal lower body injury in 2018. What would the Knicks have to trade to get somebody like Oladipo? It says right here. I might not even talk about Karl Anthony Towns, because to be honest with you, Karl Anthony Towns likes Tom Thibodeau, but in all honesty, I don't think the Knicks need a center. I don't think it hurts. I think Mitchell Robinson is a cornerstone of what the Knicks are looking for in a center. And I don't think most people can complain about what Nerlens Noel has brought in Mitchell Robinson's absence. But I don't think that they need Karl Anthony Towns. If you could get him, go for it. But I wouldn't go all out, and I don't think that it's really necessary. Here's a trade right here. The Knicks get Oladipo, and the Rockets get Obi Toppin, Kevin Knox, and a 2021 first-round pick from the Mavericks. So as you can see, a lot of these trades, or I've only gone over 2, a lot of these trades include the other team banking that Obi Toppin will be a superstar, giving them Kevin Knox because the Knicks have no need for Kevin Knox. Nilakina is not included in this one. I don't know if I would throw a third player in for Oladipo. And again, if you're a basketball fan, you'll understand Oladipo's great. Nobody's taking anything away from him, but I think that people aren't putting him in the mega superstar category. I don't think you do that with Zach Levine either, but I don't think people are putting Oladipo in that category. He's great, but I think he's a high-risk player because, again, we know he has that injury history, and also he wants a lot of money. I don't think the Knicks should offer Oladipo that much. But again, Oladipo is not interested in anything short-term. He wants to find a home. A starting 5 consisting of Quickly, Oladipo, RJ, Randall, and Robinson would be really nice. Now, here's my only problem with that is that I don't think the Knicks are ready to put Quickly as a starting guard. He's shown the potential, but I think he needs to develop more. And again, some people may not understand that. Even with them acquiring Oladipo to team up with Rose and Quickly, the backcourt would be an absolute boon for the Knicks. That's another thing the Knicks need to work on, is they need to work on a backcourt that can score consistently. You have Quickly on the backcourt, and that's really all you got. Reggie Bullock, you don't have these guys that... You don't have a backcourt that's that deep. Your starting 5 is decent, but they need to work on the backcourt. As far as Alfred Payton goes, I don't see Alfred Payton in any of these trades. That's where my question comes along, is that if Derrick Rose is moving to starting, and then you have Quickly, who's obviously a guaranteed spot on the bench or starting, then you bring in Oladipo, what happens to Alfred Payton? Somebody has to go. You have 4 guards, and that's great. One of them has to stay isolated to the bench. Does Quickly a solidified 6th man? And see, that's my only thing, is that Oladipo, you know he's playing. More than likely, he's starting. It's just a matter of how do you go about that when you have Derrick Rose, who you know needs to play, Quickly has to play, and Oladipo would start. Where does Alfred Payton? You know what I mean? I think Alfred Payton is a guy that the Knicks like for his defense and scoring, but I wouldn't be opposed to trading him either. I know that some people say, oh, why would you do that? But that's all I got really today. Just those 2 talks about those 2 players. We're at 15 minutes. I know it's the first video back. Not the greatest, a little bit rusty, but we'll stay back in tune. We've got some wrestling coming up, WrestleMania season, ladies and gentlemen, and we will stay in tune on the trade deadline and different things like that. Thank you for watching, as always.